Welcome everyone to today's session on how to pivot your marketing strategy with our special guest, Lisa Tarr from Pet Paradise. So for anybody that don't know me, I'm Nancy Kwan. I'm the Director of Digital Marketing here at Bubblebox, and we're a Salesforce consulting partner helping marketers and organizations maximize Salesforce. This includes products such as Marketing Cloud, Sales and Service Cloud, Community Cloud, Interaction Studio, Tableau, and Datorama. Though for today, I'm going to be your moderator for the session instead. And before I get started, I do need to go over a couple housekeeping items. I know the boring stuff, but just bear with me, guys, all right? So the session is recorded and a playback will be made available after the fact. I kindly ask you to put your mic on mute to reduce any type of background noise that might get picked up. I also encourage you guys to ask questions. By all means, use that hand icon at the bottom of your screen to let me know, or put your questions in the chat and I'll pick it up from there. I've intentionally kept this event small and intimate to give you guys a chance to pick Lisa's brain. This is a time where we're bringing in people together to have a conversation and build community, especially for marketers to connect with one another, to ask and understand how somebody else may approach or tackle some challenges. I highly recommend taking advantage of this time. And also being mindful of everyone's time and everyone in the room. Any company-specific questions, I ask you to save those towards the end during our Q&A time. Otherwise, I've also put our contact information in the chat area for your reference if you want to reach out to either Lisa and I at a later time and date, and or continue to poke our brain. So without further ado, I'm excited to kickstart today's session. So I'd like to introduce to you all Lisa Tarr, who is the VP of Marketing and Communication at Pet Paradise. So Lisa, thank you very much for joining me today and letting us all pick your brain. I know your time is valuable, so I highly appreciate your time to join us. So how about we start? Lisa, why don't you give us a little introduction about yourself and also about Pet Paradise?
And we are focused on pet boarding, which is overnight care, camp, which we really found over the last 5 to 10 years started ramping up as people really wanted a place to put their pet when they're at work. We've recently gotten into the veterinary care space, so we've got 22 veterinary care hospitals and clinics across the United States, and we also do grooming. So we are a very fast-growing company. Our plans are to open 8 to 10 locations a year, but it's just such a great organization and culture to be a part of. So I've been here for 12 years now, so I would say that speaks to it. But that's a little bit about me. Always love pets, love marketing, and it's a dream to do those things together.
No, that's great. Thanks, Lisa. And you touched on it. So just for everybody in the room, like Lisa and I met a few months ago, and I remember to this date, your passion for marketing really just came out of it. Your energy really showed through. And one of the things I really enjoyed about our conversation was the importance, especially as marketers, the importance of adaptability to be able to succeed, and that we weren't having those conversations of how and how do we approach it. So one of the things is when we first connected, you were actually walking through what Pet Paradise was going through, especially over the past 18 months of like what we've all been going through. Every industry, every organization, we've all seen significant changes in how we do business. But what was interesting was your story behind how did Pet Paradise adapt to change. And if you don't mind, do you mind walking us through, what Pet Paradise was going through 18 months ago, pretty much the onset of COVID, and potentially what led you to make the decisions that you had to make to be able to pivot your marketing strategies to drive success?
Yeah. So, thinking back to a place where it was a week in March, and I think everybody remembers where, we were like, what's happening? And things started getting canceled. And for me, it was when a big music festival in Austin got canceled. I realized we were in trouble with COVID and what was happening. And so for us, a big, I would say 70% of our business revenue is based on people traveling and their pets vacationing with us. So you can imagine as things started closing and shutting down, we saw a tremendous impact to, really hospitality and travel. So that was one thing that was going through my head. The other thing was realizing just what I like to call customer chaos. So all of a sudden we felt it we are customers as well, but every single facet of our behavior completely flipped upside down. From the way we shopped to going to places to gyms at home. I mean, it was a complete uphill of customer behavior. And as marketers, we can we usually can predict, right, as different behaviors are changing. Okay, people are more online now, or we know people are doing this, but it was literally within, I would say, 45 days of the entire customer completely getting flipped upside down. So for me, it was, the business was heavily impacted by travel. And then we had to really figure out our new customer. And so we had to take a step back and realize everything that we had planned. I told the team, might as well just throw it away, right? Because copy messaging campaigns, none of it spoke to what was happening with the consumer at the time. And so we realized we had to really, really hustle to meet everybody where they were at, right? Meet them from the emotional side, meet them from, being on Zooms. We created Zoom backgrounds, but it really was a complete rip up of current kind of strategy and a very, very fast adaptability and pivot to how are we going to attract new clients that are different than our existing clients, and how can we utilize our camp, our grooming, our veterinary care business, and really juice that up, because we know people are still utilizing that to really help soften some of the impact. So that was what was going through my head. I just feel like it was such a kind of a customer upheaving and chaos, and we all felt it.
I think that's the only way to explain what I think all marketers have experienced over the past 18 months, right? Like chaos is a very good, one word that really kind of wraps it into a package. Do you mind just sharing, even because having to like what you said, toss away your marketing strategy, like, hey, we spent a lot of time planning by the quarter to the year, and now you're starting from scratch. So how did you make the decision to decide what initiative or what project to push forward?
Yeah, so
maybe what we could do is actually focus into one area. Like there was probably one thing that we're going to lead into in the next slide. Yeah. But what was that one? How did you make that decision to go, we're gonna hit a certain objectives? What was that deciding factor? How did you make those decisions there?
Yeah, so we realized very quickly, from a new customer acquisition and existing customer standpoint, we needed to give our customers an option to book very quickly and without speaking to anybody or without coming inside the resort. So historically, customers come in the lobby, check in their pets, check out their pets, book their reservations, call a call center. And so we realized if we could really solve a critical business need, which was how do we get people to book online very quickly. We know we have a very slow online reservation process. So, we talked to the team about, okay, we know we need new copy, we know we need new messaging, but really how can we increase and simplify online booking for our customers? And, we realized very quickly we could stand up a chatbot. Everybody was on their phones, right? Everybody was at home. And so it was a great way for us to meet our customer where they were at. And also, I think as a marketer, it's critical to meet the business need too. So we know without bookings, people aren't coming in our building. And we can have the best campaigns in the world, but if we can't book them, they're not coming in our building. And so that's why we really honed in on this key pivot.
Mm-hmm. And I think you had, when we were chatting, you had brought up another point as well. And it was also regarding your staff. And it was, hey, your locations are closed. Before, there may have been some reception or some individual that was answering the calls, and your locations are all closed. So how are you still going to be able to manage that peace of mind and be able to address any questions that your potential customers currently have? Was that was another reason, was it not?
It was. And it really came back to trust. And people really wanted to know they could trust the place being safe. They could really trust the care. And so the chatbot met them there because our lobbies were closed, so they couldn't come in and necessarily interact. And so the chatbot was a great place to help, build that trust. As well as help our staffing during a very challenging time, which again, it goes back to the business need as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the business need and also your customers' need and their journey, what they're naturally going to be experiencing. And of course, I do have to put this out. As much as we have our goals and we know what our customer needs are, hey, we're marketers. We know that, of course, there's going to be challenges when we try to do some of these things. So I'm just wondering if you could possibly, let's try to make this a little bit more relatable for the people here on this call today. Could you tell us what you and your team's journey was like, and what were the challenges when you're going through, this upheaval of chaos that was taking place where we didn't know what was going on? How did you have to? What were those core challenges, if you don't mind speaking to it?
Yeah, I think the one that comes to mind too is it was very challenging to move very fast and pivot fast with what was happening to everybody personally. So you have people on your team, people aren't robots, and they're dealing with the impacts of COVID. And so I had a lot of team huddles, and we discussed a lot about personal impact with COVID prior to us really ratcheting and moving fast and forward with this pivot. And so we had to balance the two. Like as a leader, you really had to, because if you can't get your team engaged, you can't move fast. And we knew we moved fast. This isn't something we can roll out in 8 months. We needed it to market within 45 days. So for us, it was really, how do we do more with less? How do we use the existing structures we already have in place. We realized we had some good already in place that we could leverage to get something up very quickly. We identified, what resources we need to make sure that we can get this up quickly, because again, getting it up in 6 months didn't matter, right? We had to have speed and we had to move very, very fast. And we utilized obviously our marketing automations. So I think it speaks to the critical importance of already having existing technology and existing structure that you can constantly iterate and pivot on. We would have a really hard time if we didn't have any MarTech already built into our business as one of our kind of key objectives. So having a lot of that infrastructure already in place allowed us to identify, okay, what can we do and move quickly on, which was the chatbot. So the team really understanding, what are the opportunities and what are the gaps, and we realized, hey, this is something we get up fast. It's not going to cost us an arm and a leg, and we know we're going to make tremendous business impact to it. And then, finally, it was that rapid changing customer needs. So once we got the chatbot up, and I know we'll talk about this too, we didn't just leave it, right? We realized, hey, here's a gap. Here's something else that's changing. Here's something else that's changing. And so we constantly had to iterate. It wasn't just, hey, we won, hey, we put this up, and we're going to report on it 6 months later. It was a weekly, how do we improve? What do we need to do? Because the minute we thought we had it right with the customer changed again. I mean, it was a constant change. So that was really the big things. But I think anytime when you have a team and the team is under distress too, and you're trying to move fast, for me, it was really balancing those two together was what allowed us to really get some speed and move forward quickly while people were having a hard time, because it wasn't just the customer, it was the employees as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I remember there was another point that you brought up in the past, and it was at Pet Paradise, you do a lot of Net Promoter Score surveys, but what was the benefit about leveraging chatbot? I remember you had talked about the speed of collecting data.
Yes, yeah. So it was great. We really could get information quickly. So like you mentioned, we do NPS survey at every checkout. And we identified through that we had a big gap too within the booking reservation platform. And so we were able to collect, different information off the chatbot, what people were asking questions about, and, iterated that way as well. So definitely always coming back to the data of when you're doing these things too.
No, thanks for being transparent about the challenges. Like, I know as much as, all of us want to go, hey, we don't ever face challenges. To be honest, we do. And it's just a matter of how do we navigate and prioritize the projects or initiatives that we decide to move forward. So you touched on the chatbot, and you touched on optimization, iteration. As I move into the next slide, if you don't mind, I think it would be great just to show an example of how you were able to leverage technology and iterate. So if you don't mind walking through, what did the chatbot look like at the beginning when you first launched it, to then making the decisions, and we'll go into it over the next couple of slides, of how did you start moving it towards that shift of the FAQs only to this we have this new objective now due to the change in our consumers' need, and now we want to make sure that we're simplifying the online booking. So what I'll do is I'm going to show this screen here. It gives everybody an idea of what this chat box started out with. And Lisa, if you don't mind just talking through, what was phase one?
Yeah, so phase one, backing up a little bit. So we have a very difficult kind of user booking experience with our online reservations. It's great for resort ops, but we've always been challenged. So historically, our customers have called a call center, which is very difficult. And so what we realized, we worked with them and we identified kind of the top questions that people were calling and asking about, whether it be pricing, what vaccinations does my pet need? And we identified that was almost 35% of the calls coming in. So it wasn't even just bookings. And so what you're seeing here was really phase one, where we took those questions, gathered that data from the call center, and we put it into the chatbot. And this really helped alleviate and bring down the amount of questions that were going to the call center. So, you can click the question, it gives you the answers, simple things about vaccinations and hours of operations, just stuff that you don't need somebody to necessarily answer. We had it on our website, but we realized people were still calling. And so phase one for us was, let's get those FAQs, identify those top questions, and serve them up to our customers in a very automated way.
That's pretty cool. And I know that just for people who are curious, on the Salesforce side, it was the Service Cloud product that was actually being leveraged to run it in the back end.
Yeah.
And to your point, like a lot of people are probably going, what's the benefit of chatbot? Like you touched on it right there. It answers a lot of questions. Like you had over 35% of your calls that was just asking commonly asked questions, right? And I know a lot of times some people would ask, and I've managed call center teams on my end before, and a lot of people are going like, how do I prove the return on investments when I bring in a chatbot? And a lot of immediate thoughts, people generally will go into technology. So they're putting additional spends. But what you had already articulated earlier was that you started leveraging and maximizing the technology that you had already in your existing work environment, which was Salesforce, and then taking a look at what are the additional features that currently come with the product, and now leverage that to be able to give your consumers choice in interacting with Pet Paradise. Because here, one of the additional components about, hey, increasing your return on investment is looking at, you had touched on it. It was, how can we look at decreasing our operational costs? And when I say that, it actually, and a lot of people are wondering like, well, what do you mean by that? And what I mean by decreasing operational costs is here you have a chatbot answering those commonly asked questions, things that don't even require an individual or an agent to pick up the call and answer. But again, depending on your environment, depending on what's happening in the market, past 18 months, we had COVID, and when things get thrown up in the air, the first thing that typically happens when there's no choice to interact is everybody starts calling the call center, right? And normally what happens out of that is your call volumes, we all start spiking, especially if you have a call center, right? People start calling in, they're wanting to answer that question. Well, what's happening with me? It's all about like, what's the impact to me? And that we as organizations need to support them. But when call volume goes up, what naturally happens is your queue time, your wait time all goes up. Your abandonment rates on your calls, your drop calls all increases. These are all KPIs that get measures within call center. And a lot of the times people are kind of going, well, I'm now putting more effort into leveraging technology. How do I balance out? Should I be doing this? But my case is always around, if you need to build a business case to go, we should be looking at a chatbot, take a look at the lost opportunities from when a call doesn't get picked up, right? You're increasing the frustration with your customers. Look for ways to improve the engagement level. And if people can't get through that one channel, there's that risk where you're losing your potential customers, you're losing that revenue. So I always try to go, hey, use those numbers, use those statistics to balance out why we should be building out, why we should be looking and considering chatbots to help. The other thing that Lisa had also touched on was all around that the productivity of our agents, right? So if they're spending 35% of their time just answering the same questions over and over again, is that really beneficial to your organization and servicing your customers? Where if we put that time, that extra 35% on customers that maybe have more complex scenarios, they need a little bit more help, that's where we want our agents and our CSRs really focusing on those calls. If that's that helps alleviate some of the pain points. The other thing that the chatbot really helps on, you touched on it at the end of the last slide, was all around the data. So here we are, we're asking them questions. What's really hard and challenging on a call center is being able to collect and store the information, the data somewhere, right? So because our CSR depends on whether there's fields, is there places for them to input. But when we have the chatbot feature, there's great opportunities where you're starting to learn, you're starting to understand what the needs are. Because I don't know if you noticed on the first video clip, as the questions were being posed and made available to the user, there was always that additional option to go other, which again enables them to connect with us, ask those additional questions. We start gathering that information. If there's commonalities, there's additional questions that we could potentially solve within the chatbot that doesn't exist. So I always say, like, when you're trying to go prove the case of the value of the chatbot, huge opportunity that gets missed often without it is that we're truly understanding what that customer intent is. That usually doesn't get gathered over a phone call, nor do we have the time to quality assure all the calls to understand what our customers that are calling us require. Okay. So what I want to segue into next is, here was all these things that Lisa and Pet Paradise started off with FAQs. And if you don't mind, Lisa, walking us through the next slide, and this is what happened in phase 2. If you don't mind talking through what made you guys go down this path of optimizing your chatbot.
Yeah, so, phase 2 really came about during COVID, right? So we touched on this a little bit, but it was really, how do we enable our customers to book a reservation very seamlessly without a human interaction? And so what we did is we went back and we looked at the data. So what is the most booked reservation in our system? And we identified it was existing customers booking boarding reservations. And so that's why, phase 2 of the chatbot was really enabling our existing customers to book a boarding reservation very easy, very seamlessly. They put in their email address, it pulls up their pets, and then they, go through this path of choosing their location and their date, and then they're booked in. Because again, during COVID, with the lobbies being closed and, people calling call center about all sorts of different things, cleanliness, what are we doing for sanitation? We really wanted to unclog that experience for our existing customers to be able to book this reservation. But we pointed to the data. We went back, we put our heads together and said, hey, let's find out what is the need. Let's not guess it. And it really was that existing customer booking boarding. So we went from, FAQs, again, identifying existing structure we already had in place where we could get this up very, very quickly and launch it to market. And it was a great win for the team and for the business.
And could you, at least, do you mind talking to how did you identify? Because we'll be very transparent to get to this point. There's a couple of iterations even to get to
Yes.
what you guys are all seeing on the screen. But do you mind talking through how do you identify what was that next test, and how do you decide what to iterate next in the chatbot?
Yeah. So what we did is, people could book the boarding very easily, and then we saw people getting kicked to the agent. And so when they were getting kicked to the agent, we were working with the call center to figure out, well, why are they coming to you guys now? We can book them easily. And we identified, like, hey, these people really want to do an add-on bath, or these people want to add on different services. And so we really focused on, this addition of baths, because that's what people started asking for. So again, it's one of those things you constantly test. You have it on the screen, right? You don't just leave tech out there. Because it will become a dinosaur in 30 days. Like, you have to be listening to your customer. You have to be iterating, and it takes a lot of adaptability to do that, because what we want to do is we want to launch something and celebrate it and be like, we're done and we won. And yay, let's move on to the next, strategy or the next thing. But it really does a disservice, because you can take something that's great and make it greater, and keep keep being focused on that customer need and keep iterating. I can't stress that enough. So that's kind of the process we went through, and really challenge the team. Again, we just don't launch stuff and leave it. We've got to iterate, listen to our customers, partner with the call center. I think it's really important for marketers always to be partnering with different function groups within their business, because you learn a lot from those teams. And when you work with them in a very positive way, they help you, right? So we were able to get this information from them, which allowed us to iterate the chatbot further. So it really is constantly listening to your customer, but also building those partnerships within your business will make you very successful.
No, that's great. And I like the fact that as part of your iteration, you still continue to drive opportunities to increase your revenue numbers. Like talk about finding additional ways to cross-sell your products, right? And you probably wouldn't have known it if people weren't inputting that information within the chatbot because they were asking for it. So what I like to do, because I know a lot of people are kind of going, well, hey guys, like you guys are showing this video of the chatbot working in the visually pretty view, but hey, what does this look like on a technology on the back end? So I just want to quickly show you guys here and talk through just to give you an idea of what actually runs it. How does this all work together? So in the chat, we were asking a lot of questions about the name, the email address. We were letting people answer the questions onto what pet that they want to bring in, the date that they want to bring in their pet for the boarding, their time, their start time, their pickup time. And all this goes back into a booking request on Pet Paradise's Service Cloud. But where there is an additional opportunity, and Lisa, you had touched on it, where it comes to a point where maybe it requires an agent to answer an additional question, because now it's being a little bit more unique. And normally what happens in the system on the back end is it also leverages the Salesforce Sales Cloud instance and using the lead object to create opportunities for the agent to do a more of an additional discovery or interaction with the customer. But we don't stop there. There's additional opportunities that come out of it, because here as marketers, as we spent all this time creating the chatbot, hey, let's not just create an initiative that's just working in isolation. So this is where, as marketers, we're collaborating with our service team to look for opportunities to communicate with our customers. And this is where Marketing Cloud has a great way to engage our leads or engage our existing customers. Lisa, you had talked about, there's a lot of change that's happening. So in terms of making sure that we're able to communicate to our customers and our prospects, letting them know what to expect so we could create welcome journeys that is all automated and running on its own. At the same time, we have the opportunity to do reminders or look for ways to do that upsell. So maybe there's some clients that might not be naturally adding that, I'm probably not calling this right, but that shampoo, right. Right. The bath feature. And we could actually go, here's a bucket of people that match up to our existing audience that has a likelihood to cross-sell. And we could actually set those up within data extensions in Marketing Cloud. So again, there's additional ways to continue to educate our customers, not only from a welcoming perspective, get them familiar to us, get them familiar to what to expect with their upcoming booking. But at the same time, Lisa, your chatbot was also collecting information because it was validating with the user where they were located. So you guys are growing at an insane pace. You had what was the number again? Opening locations.
Yeah, we've got 50 open or under development.
Yeah, so huge amount. But sometimes, people who are interested, or they're driving by and they see that there's this location coming up, the location may not be ready yet, but when that time comes, you've already collected that information. Now you're able to, again, punt out that introduction journey and to, again, try to acquire those potential leads and those prospects to come to you with their loving pets, right? So we've talked on the chatbot, how you pivoted. So it's I love hearing that story, because you're able to not just go, hey, it's not working. You guys were able to maximize it to drive more revenue. But what I want to move on to next, because there was a couple of questions coming in from people who are registered to this event. We always say, hey, pivot, pivot fast, but I know sometimes that's not always easy.
No,
And the
never
fact that
easy.
never easy, but the
Never.
fact that I have you here, what I always love to do, my guests, is always put you in the hot seat. So I'm definitely going to put a couple questions out there, and I'm wondering if you could share, any recommendations, any tips, any best practices that come to mind that our attendees could actually take away and hopefully put into their strategies and get buy-in. Okay. So the first question that we got was all around what, as what are the areas as marketers, what should we consider as part of our proposal or a presentation that we should include that will help the likelihood of our leadership or our executive team prove what we're presenting and or pivot to our crazy ideas that sometimes we have.
Yeah, I think this is one that a lot of marketers are constantly asking themselves because we do sit in a very unique seat, right? We're expected to know tech, know financials, know business operations. And so for me, I think the two biggest things is number one, always tied to the business need, right? So showing value within the business, how you're growing the business, how you are in the chatbot instance, it was decreasing staffing as well as increasing revenue and meeting our customer where it was at. So I think number one is always how is it impacting the business and what are those KPIs versus this is a great marketing strategy. I think we always want to talk about our marketing strategies because, well, why wouldn't we? Because they're amazing, right? But when you come to the leadership team, you come at it from a business need first, and then here is kind of the marketing strategy that's going to allow us to meet this business need. I think that's number one. And number two for us, it's really tying it back to our core values. So every company or organization has core values. And leadership and executive team, especially the CEO, they are, I say we because I sit on this team, but we're locked in on those core values. And for us, one of them is innovation, right? And so again, with the chatbot during this crazy time, what are we going to do? We were really able to show, hey, we can move on innovation and we're going to meet our customer where they're at. So I think my two big tips are really, it's got to be number one, how is it impacting the business from a value add perspective? And two, how does it align with our core values? I think are the two that you really bring in to those presentations. But beyond that, I think it goes back to, what are your relationships with those people day to day? How are you interacting with them day to day? How do they understand your marketing function and how does it bring value to the business? Because that's what their ears are around is the business and the value to the business. So I think anytime you can start with the business impact and the value and then discuss the strategies of what are going to get you there, I think you naturally win every time because you're showing as a marketer that you're attuned to what leadership is looking for.
No, that's a two very, very good points. And I think what you said, I don't know if it really came out very loud, but the importance of connecting with your peer group.
Yes.
Because that's where through conversation, you're starting to identify where the potential risks are, but that's where the opportunities as a team, not only from a marketing perspective, but able to collaborate with your peers to reduce that risk and look for your other areas of opportunity.
That's right.
No, that's awesome. Thank you. So the second question that we got in the registration was, of course, tips to get more budget. I know as a marketing, this is something usually I hear often, or even I've gotten from my team where they turn to me and my managers are going, "Hey, Nancy, I need more money." But so what would be your best practice or your tips to try to get more approvals or how to actually maximize your budget?
Yeah, I think this is this is one that not necessarily marketing people get bad raps around, but we're notorious, right, that we need more budget. And so I think before you get to the tips to get more budget, you need to ask yourself if you actually need more budget. So what we went through during this time was we know that a lot of our existing strategies were not working because of the way the customer is changing. And so we were able to reallocate funds, right, to go towards this chatbot and this new strategy because during COVID, there was a lot of compression on marketing budgets. But I think as a marketer, you've got to ask yourself, do you actually need more budget? Or are you spending stuff in a not efficient way? And I think it really shows, again, how you're thinking about the business, thinking about the profitability of the business, right? Before asking. Now, there are cases where you do need more budget, right? And I think in those cases, let's say you can't repurpose or reallocate, you tie it back to the business need and you tie it back to the value and you show the ROI. I think it's absolutely critical when you ask for funds that you show the ROI. And even if it's an ROI that you can't get absolute. I struggled with this for years because we're very challenged with our systems before Salesforce. We had many different systems, and as a marketer, you need to know what's happening. For us, it was at the resort level and the revenue and trying to marry it back up. It was a disaster. But anytime I was looking at spend, I still came up with some type of goal or some type of ROI, even if it wasn't absolute. Obviously, with technology, you can get more absolute, but I think it always comes back to if you do need the budget to make sure you tie the ROI with it always. If you can't get the ROI, create a goal, create best practices, create a, hey, this is how I'm going to track and show value. Don't just leave it kind of out in outer space. But I do think as marketers, to help kind of change the viewpoint of the marketing function of always spending, marketers always spend, we need to ask ourselves, are we spending efficiently and are we spending in the right way? And I think a lot of times when you look at it, you can repurpose funds or identify things that are maybe not providing value anymore to the business because the customer is constantly changing. And so I think those are my kind of two tips, but a little bit of the challenge of, do you actually need the budget? We all want more, but can you do more with less? I think is a challenge for marketers to be more efficient.
Yeah, hence the number one challenge when we reflect back on that previous slide,
Yeah,
right? Do more with less.
that's right. That's exactly right.
No, those are really, really great tips. And then the last one we got was, what was the benefit to working with a partner?
Yeah, I think the benefit is tremendous. The whole kind of two heads are better than one heads, right? There's all these sayings, but when you have a group that's outside of your business and you can talk to them about your challenges and about your needs, all of a sudden you get a whole different perspective and strategy. And for us, it was always picking the right partner that's going to allow us to keep growing, allow us to grow smart, and somebody that's strategic. So historically, we've worked with different partners, great tech companies, but I think when you have a tech company that gets strategy, you are in a whole different bucket. And it gives you a new platform to sound off of. I know Nancy and I've ripped about different, challenges I have, and the team at Bubblebox, when we went to them about the chatbot, they were on board and excited. And so I think when you have somebody in your space that's supporting you, that you can constantly ask questions and, hey, what do you think? What do you think? It gives you a whole different leverage because you kind of have two teams now, right, on your side. And it is just such a benefit. But I can't stress the importance of, I think, tech is one thing, but tech with strategy is a whole nother thing because it really gets you to, how is this going to impact my business and bring value to the organization?
Yeah, and thank you for that, Lisa. And I think one of the common questions, and we do this a lot in our conversations, we throw it back to each other is, well, why? Why would we do that? And it's actually taking that time to pause and reflect, to go, yeah, why are we wanting to do that execution?
Yeah.
And have we strategically thought about the potential impacts and the benefit that come out of it? So if people are wondering, when Lisa and I go into our in our friendly banters, that's usually some of the questions that we challenge each other, right? So these are the questions that normally come up in our conversations. This is great. Thank you, Lisa, for answering those. I know some of those are tough questions because, but I really value the fact that you took the time to answer those, because I always enjoy seeing how somebody else would tackle each of those scenarios. So I hope some of you guys that are currently on this call will be able to take it away and apply it in real life, or hey, I'll even throw it up there. And even Lisa, if you're down for it, if anybody is going like, wait, I've tried, I don't know what to do, what my next steps are, by all means, feel free to reach out to Lisa or even myself, and we're more than happy to guide you there, because this is what this community is all about. It's all about sharing our experiences and just another way of thinking sometimes, because we do get as marketers, we do get faced with a lot of challenges from our day to day.
Yep.
So thank you very much, Lisa, on that. I know with some people might be like, okay, well, you went from FAQ to this meeting your goal for your online booking and simplifying that process. What is next for Pet Paradise?
Yeah, so there's so much that's next for Pet Paradise, but this is one that we'll focus on. So we also, during COVID, with our lobbies closing and people wanting contactless service, we went to market in 6 weeks with a pet dash experience. So people can drive up in their car, staff gets the pet, and they don't have to come in. So this was a very quick, how do we get this to market? Partnering with operations call center. And so we got Pet Dash up. Obviously, it has its challenges because, again, we didn't build it exactly like the Cadillac that we would want to. So for us, next is refocusing on Pet Dash because we feel like it's a great service offering. It's something that makes us very different in the space. We use it for vet care too. So a lot of millennial customers really like the convenience of, pulling up, the vet comes, gets the dog. The vet gets, to check out the dog, brings it back, or the cat, for all you cat lovers. So this is a great way, again, to add this convenience and to make it different, or make us very different in the space. So it really started off from a customer need of people, not wanting to come in, but we're now in a place where we want to keep growing it and making it more tech savvy and easier to use on the customer side. So we're refocused on our new Pet Dash experience.
I love that. Always looking for another way to interact with your customers. So if we had to, I'm just going to wrap it up. We're coming to the close of our presentation. If you had to give 3 pointers or 3 takeaways for everybody that's on this call, what would be those 3 things to call out for people to focus on?
Yeah, I think, we've talked about a lot of different things, but it really comes down to identifying the issues. I think not only on the customer side, but the business side, because when you marry those two together, it really will show value within the marketing function. And once you do, you've got to make sure you prioritize and you keep iterating, right? So once you identify what is that one thing, for us, it was the chatbot, don't just set it and leave it. Keep optimizing, keep iterating, keep making it better, because people are always changing and customers are always changing. And as a marketer, we have to wear that hat now. Historically, we didn't have to wear that hat. You kind of set a campaign and left it and hope for the best. But truly, the customer is constantly changing, and we need to keep iterating. So don't set stuff and leave it. And I think lastly, you've got to take chances. I think you saw 2 different marketing strategies that happened during COVID, and we saw it within our industry. Right? So we looked at competitors. We tried to see what they were doing, and we saw some that just completely paused. Right? They completely paused. Maybe they didn't have the resources. Maybe they didn't have the right infrastructure, but they paused everything they were doing and kind of waited. Right? Let's just wait to get through. Let's wait for travel to come back. Let's wait to do something. But when you take the offense and you're not afraid, you really all of a sudden can gain such momentum against your competitors, but as well as meet a need of a customer that really needs your service right then and there. For us, it was really camp, and it was grooming, and it was veterinary care. And then you make customers for life. And so what we've seen by not being afraid in this space is we've seen tremendous growth this year. We've seen tremendous tailwinds. All those people adopting pets. Us being out there, still advertising, still putting our brand out there in very unique ways. We were able to capture them, and they're flooding us this year, which is a great thing. But you have 2 choices. You can sit and wait, or you can really go for it and take a chance and not be afraid. And I think those are the companies you see that are very successful.
No, that's great. And normally when you apply those 3 areas, the great thing out of that is you actually are able to start achieving the results.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is results matter. So don't forget the results. So, obviously you can see on the screen, but really got to identify, what was the KPI you're looking at and how is it doing. You overcome those challenges, you close the resource and skills gaps, and you keep optimizing. So, thinking about the chatbot, which we've been talking about today, we really looked at those original KPIs we set, how are we doing on them, and then how do we keep iterating and keep listening. And it's led us to, more and new things, even this year. So even if you're starting somewhere small, I think you can still keep growing and iterating and changing. So don't be afraid to, start that one thing that may seem like nobody else thinks it's a great idea. But again, I think if you can show the business value, it is a great idea. Because
It's
you're going to
true.
provide that value to the business in the end.
No, thank you so much. Lisa, that's been really, really great. I'm really happy that I was able to get your time to walk us through what an organization like Pet Paradise and yourself, what you had to go through. And this, let's be honest, this isn't just an experience that we would ever experience only in COVID. This is going to be every time there's going to be a change in their environment, in our marketplace. We as marketers have to take these key points into consideration to be able to drive success and continue to help our organizations grow.